so like you were saying, working in restaurants, like
no fucking Applebee's.
Yeah. Say no Applebee's. I was working when I first heard that story. I had come and visited you guys up in Tallahassee. I brought that back, and I was working at the Barrel, Cracker Barrel, for like I think like another week or something.
Okay.
Like I knew I was quitting, and somebody came in. Huge group, and I don't know what it was like. I originally, when you start working there, it's really kind of humiliating because you start with it's this rising star on your little apron.
Yeah, they make you look real pathetic.
Yeah, it's bad. It's like, how are we gonna
This guy's a
dehumanize
punk
you?
bitch.
Yeah. Go outside and get me a switch, boy.
That's right.
You messed up my hash brown. But so this woman came right up to me. And she starts talking about, she's like, hey, we got a big party of like 12 people. And immediately her husband walks, like supersedes her decision making. Everything. It just goes right past her and starts moving tables.
Oh, yeah.
Like right in front of me. And I'm like, and it's not really my section. Like, and I'm trying to like bounce a girl, like look for any authority of like, who's in charge here
Right.
to tell her that's probably not okay.
Right.
And so the guy just starts moving 3 or 4 tables and he's trying to get like 12 chairs. And the hostess comes around and she's trying to seat people in that section. And it's starting to cause chaos. And so I go in the back and I get my manager who's behind the door, of course. And like it's a bulletproof window, like office. And I'm always like, why is that such high security
Money.
for a Cracker Barrel? Right. But it's still
There's a
it's
lot
like,
more money than you think going in and out of a
I guess
restaurant.
going into biscuits.
Yeah.
Going into biscuits and gravy.
Yeah.
But
$50 meals add up.
Yeah. 15. Oh,
No, like
man,
if you bring in a bunch of people, it's like a $50 meal.
Yeah.
You have a bunch of people all day long. That's a lot of money sitting in a restaurant by the end of the night.
I got some horror stories about the Barrel if I can tell, if I can tell some. So I'm pounding on the door. I'm like, hey, like Brian, like get out here, man. We got a situation. He comes out, and before he would like approach anyone, he would always ask like, what's going on? Just like tell me, so I don't know. I'm not.
Yeah,
going
you want
to
the
this
rundown.
So I'm like, okay. They came in. They said they have a 12 top. He just started moving tables, and Brian looks at me and he goes, why the hell would he do that? And I just go, I don't know. This ain't no fucking Applebee's.
Nice.
And he laughed.
Perfect use.
No, Brian, he broke down.
Yeah.
He like, and when it was funny is like when I was working with him, like he hired me, I was like 20, maybe 22, 21. No, I was 21. Sorry. And when he hired me, I then found out he's 23.
There you go.
I was like, he's like, but he looks so much older than me. He just has city miles on him is the thing. Like a lot. And I
He'd
thought
been ridden hard and hung up wet.
Yeah. I thought he was like in his mid 30s.
Hey,
like
he probably been managing for a few years.
Yeah.
It takes a whole hell of a lot out of you. Everybody's problem becomes your problem real quick.
That's life at the Barrel. That's what that'll do to you. That's and so like I said that to him, I was like, this ain't no fucking Applebee's.
Yeah, luckily I enjoy
he broke.
Like you know, I do work 2 jobs, and part of the reason that I still work at the GRS is because I enjoy it. I enjoy the people. I enjoy the life. It keeps you real social. You meet a ton of people working with them.
I loved that too. Yeah.
And then the family, you know, love the family. They're like family to me. So, but the craziest stories were probably during COVID.
Oh, really?
We were still open, and then you know, as our lockdowns eased earlier than most here in Florida. But we still had the mask mandates and stuff. So we had to do the ridiculous stuff where it's like you could come in wearing a mask, and when you sat at your table, you could take your mask off.
Yeah.
Because there was an invisible bubble that just formed because your butt was in a chair.
COVID only existed in the aisles.
Exactly. Once you got on your feet, you're like, COVID's everywhere.
It's here.
I can see it. It's in the air.
It's just a pink mist.
How crazy would that be if it actually was? But
like something you could run from. Oh shit! There it is.
Duck, dodge, duck, dip, dive, dodge. But the craziest one was we had a couple, an older Hispanic couple, and the host called me to the front and told me that the guy was refusing to put a mask on. And so I went up and I said, sir, I'm sorry. You know, this is not our rule. This is Miami-Dade County's rule. In order for us to be open, we have to follow their guidelines. So you have to put a mask on or you have to leave. Like, I would love to serve you.
Yeah.
But if this is going to be an issue, like, we don't have a choice.
Yeah.
And so he held it over his face. And I said, that's fine, man. You can walk to the table like that.
Just get there.
So then he walked to the back, and we have 2 garden tikis outside, or a main tiki and a garden tiki, and they were getting sat in the garden tiki, so they had to go around these ponds that we have.
Yeah.
And there's the customer way, and there's the server alley. And I watched his hand come down from his face as he went around the back of the... So I went around and I said, sir.
Please.
Like,
yeah.
I hate to have to do this, but we talked about this. If you do not keep the mask on, then I'm going to have to ask you to leave. And he got all upset. And I said, okay, bye. Like, see ya. And then his wife was just mortified by his behavior. Because as he's walking out, everyone starts clapping because I'm walking him out of the restaurant. I'm like, dude, I told you, man. Like, this is the rules.
Yeah.
This is not my rules. Yeah. This is not our rules.
And it's not like you're oblivious to how like kind of ridiculous.
Of course, we just joked about it.
We have to do this. Like just.
And I even told him to his face, like, dude, I get it, man. I get where you're coming. I feel the same way, but in order for me to have a business open, I don't have a choice in the matter. So just play along, please.
Right. Just play. I mean, you got to think about this. I know you want your meal,
right?
But all these other people here and all the people working in the back, they want to work and eat too.
Would you just get to your bubble?
Just get to the bubble. Get to the invisible dome.
Keep the pink mist away.
In your booth. Get the pink mist away. Oh my gosh, dude. Well,
welcome back to another episode of Nostalgia Land. Unfortunately, as you can see by the lack of a third camera, it's just me and Matt today.
I always had a hunch at some point
it would just be the two of us.
It would just end up being us.
Trey's a busy guy.
Yeah, no, I know.
Life comes at you fast, but
if you don't
we miss Trey. And I want to say thank you again to Tony for the past 2 episodes. It was so much fun.
It really was. Yeah.
Getting his take on things and hearing his stories. We may have to do Goldeneye again one day, just to give the movie its due.
Yeah,
because we had a ton of stories and not a lot of time for the movie toward the end there. But what a great movie and what a great time it was. And I just want to say, Trey, we miss you.
Yeah, I missed you too.
Hope things are awesome. Yeah. And hope you can be back. If not in the next couple weeks, a little as soon as possible.
Yeah, and if anything, I want him to like record a little cameo.
Oh, yeah.
Just something quick. He can give his opinion about what's going on. Maybe a favorite scene.
He's like, you guys suck.
Yeah, this is terrible. I can't hear myself at all.
You got to turn my mic up.
You got to turn way up. Way up.
I need you to turn me up in my headphones. Turn off my headphones.
Just mouthing at me. I got nothing. I got nothing.
Like that Eminem track?
Yeah, that's right.
I can't hear my headphones. Turn up my headphones.
Oh, yeah. So we are down a man. We were trying to get your other brother in here, but totally understand people have schedules.
Also very busy life.
Very busy.
He's got a family and everything to worry about, and then
and he works for a tyrant. He works for an absolute tyrant of a horrible boss. And Tanner, if you're listening to this right now, I hope you put that on speaker.
Tell him.
Just turn your chair around and you tell him right to his back, of the back of his head.
We love you too.
We love you too. Don't. I love you, man. Please don't be upset.
Yeah, and then by the time we realized the situation that we were, because Tony was trying to come back, he ended up having to work, and he didn't find out till late because of his kayaking trip, because he is a man of the world.
My goodness,
man of the world.
I mean, he is also married, has a really, incredibly stressful job. Out of all of us, I don't think I would ever want to do his job. Just I don't.
No,
it's way too much.
It's scary.
And he protects and serves. That's all I will say. He's an amazing guy.
I believe the term you're looking for is badass.
Yeah, absolute badass. Yeah, Bad Boys was written about him.
No, I thought it was the other guys.
Oh,
he's not Mark Wahlberg.
Police Academy 7. No, but this guy, he's amazing that like he sends us videos of him out like doing his training and stuff. He's flying, he's jumping from helicopters, he's busting through doors, And then he's spending time going for a week. Or what do you say? A week or 12 days out in the Everglades?
I think it was a like a work week. I think he left Monday, but I could be wrong. I can't remember exactly what he said.
Yeah, but
we couldn't get a hold of him. And I thought when he wasn't, because he was texting us back like almost immediately every time, and then for like 5 days,
just nothing.
There was no response.
No
and I'm
response.
like, he did say he was going kayaking, so he's probably kayaking.
I thought that was just like a day thing,
Yeah.
like a couple hours.
Yeah.
Not. Oh no, he like they were going out. I think he said 12 miles.
They went far.
Yeah, they would go 12 miles for the day, set up camp, eat, sleep out in the somewhere in the Everglades.
Yeah.
No idea, and then wake up the next morning, do it again. 12 more miles on a kayak. I can do maybe an
17
hour.
minutes.
Yes. Maybe
because when you were like, oh man, how do I get in on these adventures? He came back with the nicest way possible to say you guys are too out of shape to come kayaking with us. And I was like, you know what? You're not wrong.
You're not.
I'm working on it, but you're not wrong.
I started working on it myself. I'm walking more. I'm trying not to. I'm cutting down on bread. I realized like when I started, like whenever I go for a snack, it's always a carb.
Yeah.
It's always like a heavy carb.
Bread
And
makes me feel good inside.
But yeah, it warms my tummy.
It's like a hug from the inside.
It is. What's it? Someone said rubbing alcohol is for the outside boo-boos. Drinking alcohol is for the inside boo-boos. So, yeah. So then this guy, he told it. He's like, we go 12 hours and we do this, or 12 miles and we kayak and we camp and we fish and Bill and stuff, and I was like, that's not for me.
Yeah, no,
that's not. But as a native, I was like, you know what we used to call that?
It's true.
Just a Tuesday.
Yeah,
that's
just living.
It's just what we did.
Yeah, that's how we're getting by. Especially the type of native that you guys are.
Yeah. That's exactly what we did.
Exactly what
that
you
was
did.
our life.
Yeah.
That was everything. So, oh man, so he's out in the glades. But anyway, so today
he was out in the great outdoors.
Okay, that's a great segue for this one. I was going to ask you which one you wanted to do because this is perfect. Okay, Great Outdoors. Let's run with it, man. This was 1988. The Great Outdoors. John Candy and two of my favorite guys.
Dude, the best.
John Candy and oh my God, I just almost said Jim Belushi. Why
Dan
did I
Aykroyd?
say Jim Belushi.
Elwood Blues.
Yeah, Elwood Blues. Dan Aykroyd and 80s. Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah.
Which honestly, I didn't. Then you get into 90s Dan Aykroyd. Not great. He directed some things, but he was weird parts. But then you got early 2000s Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah.
Like from 51st Dates.
Yeah.
Absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
Again. Definitely in his role, like in his element, like just being that I'm informative. I talk and I just go through, and he can say so many big words in the span
Super
of like
fast.
10 seconds.
Yeah, and pronounce every syllable.
Every single syllable.
Consonant and vowel.
Every single one, which I struggle with on this show.
Yeah.
Like when I'm listening to myself and watching us, I'm like, open your damn mouth, Matt. Like
unique New York.
Yeah.
Unique New York. The Human Torch was denied a bank loan.
The arsonist had oddly shaped feet.
Yes, exactly.
Wait, hold on. What's the one if I could do it? Can I do it? Nope.
Can't do it.
I'm done.
The man kick back, star.
the man, the burrito. Kick back.
Oh man. So John Hughes just destroyed the 80s.
Oh my gosh. Everything was a winner with him. I know this one didn't do well in the theater.
Yeah.
But
it's
in terms,
too bad.
I mean, in terms of like the VHS classic and when I saw it, like two scenes from this movie blew me away, which if you're first time listeners to this to Nostalgia Land, thank you for joining us. But so the purpose of our show, what we like to do is we would just want to remind and reflect, and we like to, bring up things that were important to us. And we hope it inspires you to then go and, find these movies or TV shows, video games, and share them with your kids.
Yeah.
And that you're able to feel the same nostalgia that we have for them and the love of them. So that's our show. That's what we're here to do. And when I watched this movie again, I was like, I feel like I've seen this again. I feel like I've seen this. I feel like I've seen this. And then the moment the bear's ass gets
the end of the movie.
I went, oh, this movie.
The funniest part is when I was a little kid, like I've said before on the show, 5 years old, I saw Predator.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And the this movie would stay in my parents' room on the shelf because I guess somebody walked in when we were watching it, and Dan Aykroyd has the lips and assholes line. And then my mother was mortified that he had said assholes. And all I could think back then was, if you only knew.
If only knew. I've already watched a man's head, then their spine.
I've seen all of
body.
Jesse Ventura's insides.
Oh my goodness. Oh God, Jesse Ventura. Anyways, yeah. I forget that he's a wrestler sometimes.
Or was
a wrestler, yeah. Sorry,
no,
was
just
a wrestler.
the governor.
But
now
yeah.
he's just a crazy person who lives in the Baja.
Oh,
Have you ever
does.
seen Will Sasso do his Jesse the Body impression?
No.
He's spot on.
Will Sasso is amazing
He's
in those roles.
spot on. And Theo Vaughn had Jesse the Body on, and it's the craziest interview I've ever heard.
I need to go check that out.
and then I think it was like the next week Theo Vaughn had Will Sasso on, and he says, "Yeah, dude, I just had Jesse the Body on." And he was like, "No way!" And he goes like, "Yeah, I literally talked for 17 minutes, and he talked for 3 hours." and he was talking about how he's living in the Baja. Then Will Sasso just comes in with like, "In the Baja," like doing his impression, and it is so similar to the actual Jesse the Body. It's crazy.
I think that if we ever got a celebrity on here, and one that I think I would be open to being on the show would be maybe to have Gary Busey come on and talk about
eating burritos backwards,
or just ask him one question about that movie with Steven Seagal. He's in the Navy and
Under Siege.
Under Siege, thank you. Just ask him one question, be like, so what was that like? And I just let him go. We just sit back and just let that butter sausage loving man just go for however long.
At least Gary Busey has an excuse. He was in a serious motorcycle accident. Jesse the Body is just a crazy person.
He's nothing to do with that.
Well, the craziest part with it's like him and Alex Jones, where it's like, you're crazy, and then you come to find out, well, maybe not about everything, and that kind of makes me nervous.
Just to know where your mind goes and where it comes back.
Like 10 years ago when Alex Jones was saying they have an island where they take the famous and there's kids and they get them in compromising positions, and everyone's going, this guy's a crazy person.
And then,
hello, Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
How are you today? And it's like, oh, dude, this dude was right about it. Oh, gosh.
Yeah. And have you seen those people on those clips? And I know we got to get to the movies, but have you seen those clips? Listen, listeners, we totally understand. Sometimes we go on these tangents and we will get to the parts. But if you want to go look up where the Great Outdoors is right now on IMDb, feel free. We're going to go on a little tangent here. Have you seen those clips that people have they've been they knew all along, and in the early 90s and early 2000s, and they're in interviews, and it's celebrities, and they're like, oh, what's her name? Who played Pepper Potts?
Gwyneth
Paltrow. She's on it, and she's like, and they're like, and you're working with, and Oprah's like, you're working with Harvey Weinstein, and she's like, oh, Harvey, and she immediately dead on looks at the camera like, I'm gonna murder you, you're the worst person, and then everyone's like, oh, she's overreacting, and then all that shit came out about Harvey Weinstein, and everyone's just like, oh, she was right. And
that's so crazy.
There's so many of those though. So many, and what's his name?
Bill Cosby.
He did that whole stand-up bit. Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby.
He was America's dad.
I know.
And Danny Tanner, Bob Saget.
That was really hard. That was a hard pill to swallow. And then on top of it, he probably gave people hard pills to swallow.
I was going to say you shouldn't talk about hard pills and Bill Cosby in the same sentence.
I'm just gonna go pour myself a drink. Anyway, but when he came out, people brought up his old stand up, and they're talking about Spanish Fly.
Yeah,
and he's like, oh yeah, Spanish Fly. We're gonna go get Spanish Fly. Which Spanish Fly turns out is basically roof.
Yeah,
it's roofing.
It's a date rape joke.
It's a date rape joke. Yeah, and he's telling it in his stand-up in front, and we're all laughing hysterically
because we thought it was a joke.
Yeah,
we didn't know it was serious.
He was openly getting that off his conscience.
Yeah,
and we encouraged it. I think there's some blame on us as a society.
It's part of the Illuminati.
Yeah, and then it was it was hard when watching Danny Tanner, Bob Saget doing his stand-up.
Yeah, but he was super funny.
Yeah. Oh no, but he was
just
funny.
He was so vulgar with it because he was such a good dad for a kid show back in the day. Like, he had made himself such a clean character that he had to go hard the other way.
Oh man, yeah, dude. And the things like the first time I really that I was like, whoa, like blown away by like how vulgar he could be was actually watching Dumb and Dumber.
Oh, okay.
That Dumb and Dumber like prequel. It's so hard sometimes to believe that it was made.
I don't think I ever saw Dumb and Dumber, but I know what you're talking about.
It's bad. So the guy who's playing young Harry puts a chocolate bar in the back of his pants, and then he goes upstairs and he has horrible diarrhea. It's like the same gags over and over, like from the good one that they put in this prequel sequel. And he goes upstairs and he puts his pants like on the radiator, and then the chocolate bar melts, and so he puts his pants back on, and he's over at this person's house, and they're under the impression that he's special needs. And so he's in there and he puts his hand in his back pocket and it's filled with chocolate.
Yeah, and he just licks
and
his hand.
Just starts, he starts smelling it and he starts throwing it around the room and it's smeared on the walls and it's on the towel. It's horrible. And then he leaves like out of a panic, and Bob Saget comes in and just looks around the whole bathroom and goes, "There's shit everywhere. Oh my God." It's just over and over again. Him just yelling. I was like, "Whoa, Danny, like calm down."
It's like in Half Baked.
Yeah.
When he used to Here's like different weed.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like different coke. I seen him do it.
I've seen him do it. The voice in the background. I've seen him do it. Oh gosh.
Okay.
So Dan Aykroyd, John Candy. John Candy now is a staple for a lot of John Hughes movies. Like he was in Uncle Buck,
Planes, Trains, and
Automobiles, and now he's getting another star role.
Made an appearance in Home Alone.
He was in Home Alone as the Polka King. Polka.
Yep, the Polka King of the Midwest.
Polka King of the Midwest. So the whole movie is based on that this family, they just want to go to a cabin.
This movie has one of the best openings. I love the opening scene of this movie when the opening credits are rolling.
Yeah.
And it's Yakety Yak.
Don't talk back.
The song. And they're just driving in the car on their way to a vacation in the North Woods. And John Candy wants to take his family. He has two boys, Buck and Benny. And his wife up to basically do what his dad did.
Yeah.
And take him on a trip where they stay in a cabin in the woods and they just have some serious father-son bonding time.
Yeah.
And but that scene, I love it. It's so beautiful as they're driving with the animals. And
I thought they kind of borrowed some footage from the other movie we're going to talk about.
It's possible.
Because I mean, I'm looking through it, I'm like, this setup is really similar here. Like it's almost hand in hand. Like because there's deer. And like you said, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's just that high mountain country in California that they say is Wisconsin. I'm like, that's not Wisconsin.
No. It's like big something lake in Northern California is where they filmed it.
Absolutely gorgeous. And it's California has.
It's like probably one of the most beautiful states in the country.
It is.
And it has everything from big cities to the redwood forest. Like crazy. We
went to Muir Woods because we thought we did a huge road trip. We thought we were gonna have to go all the way up to like north of San Francisco, like like 4 hours north to see redwoods. We went to Muir Woods, which is just across the river. Sorry, across the ocean bay on the other side of Alcatraz, north side, and humongous redwood trees.
It's crazy.
And it was one of the most beautiful places you could imagine. So it's like, yeah, okay, I get it. Like people put up a lot of crap to live here, but this is their backyard. Like I understand. It's kind of like the same, like when people are like, why did you move back to Florida? And you're just like, well, hold on. Like, yeah, come on down. And
I live where you vacation.
Yeah.
Remember that.
It's 73 right now for a lot of folks.
That's the real advantage that California has over us is it's always in the 70s for the majority of the year. We typically spend our time in the high 90s. And you just get used to it.
You do. Well, you detox a lot. That's it. You just sweat out everything, and then you can go drink again, which I think is a plus. Anyway, so you're saying the opening scene, absolutely beautiful.
Don't talk back.
Absolutely beautiful. If I knew that song better, I'd join you.
Then they roll up, and you get the opening where they get out of the car and go inside to get their room, and there's nobody at the front desk, and there's a horn on the wall, and it says, "For prompt service, blow me."
Yeah. Like John Candy's little things that he's like, well, this is different. Well,
Yeah.
that's new. And it's just like, you just like kind of
His
look.
straight man is so awesome.
And you need to see him. There's some clips of him and like Rick Moranis and Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara when they were doing, I forget the name, but it's they did a Canadian like
Second
Saturday Night Live. Yeah, but it was like a Saturday Night Live.
It's like SLC or something like that. It's letters.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'll try to find that. But and even still back then he was just hysterical. Like it's amazing to see how much talent they had, and you're like, God, they're still good. They're still so funny. But I love that when they pulled up and he blows the horn. And these two old people come forward, and the
dog comes shooting up.
Yeah.
With porcupine quills sticking out of its face.
What's the first thing he says?
He's like, oh, hold on, you get back there. Sorry about it. I can't remember the dog's name off the top of my head, darn. But he's like, get back. She hates people. And then Buck, the son, asks, what's wrong with that dog's face?
Yeah.
Oh, they're porcupine quills. Loves porcupines. Hates people. And she's in heat. Too bad you're not a dog.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Direct camera, like to that kid's face, just like, huh? Having a moment. Well, and then it took me a minute to understand the relationship. So they get there, they get to the cabin, and they're like, the whole time, they're like, oh, this, they get out front of the cabin. I love the way he sets it up because he's like, oh, we just renovated it. It's new furniture. Everything's beautiful inside. And the bunch of fishermen just left.
We spent $300 renovating this whole place.
Yeah. And that's not counting
the Lysol
spray. And they're like, oh, okay.
So funny.
But they bust in and the place is trashed. And so that's like the first thing they start doing. There's fish, there's dead fish. They're like, where's the toilet seat? They're like, oh, he found it out on the sun porch. And he's like, why do you think it was out there? He's like, God only knows.
Yeah.
So anyways, John Candy and his wife, which I need to look up what her name was, they kind of notice, hey, the kids are out at the lake. We have this whole house.
Well, John Candy definitely notices.
Yeah, and she's just trying to clean up.
Cleaning up fish. They're finding fish in every nook and cranny of the whole house. So he comes in saying, I found out why the shower stunk, and he's holding like fish like that big. Ridiculous.
Yeah. So John Candy starts making his moves and starts kind of like getting her like into
trying
the
to
mood,
get sexy.
trying to get a little John Candy time in there, little Candyland.
Nice.
So he gets in there, and one of the funniest things that I was like, this is a John Hughes movie, is he does these little John Candy has these great chubby little fingers, and so it's a shot of the back of her back, and it's her bra. And he does this little like happy little chubby boy, like this little finger wiggle, and like kind of cracks him out. And then like he's gonna go in there, and in walks.
Well, while this whole like sexy, like him trying to seduce her, and it starts to work. She starts to get into it. It starts cutting, and it's the like kind of sinister music. And it's Dan Aykroyd behind the wheel of his Mercedes with his family on their way to this cabin in the woods, and his wife, what's the actress's name? She's a big time.
I'll find her. Yeah,
she ended up winning Academy Awards. She had a very good career afterwards.
It was Annette Bening.
Yes, yes, Annette Bening, and the two daughters who look like they plucked them right out of The Shining.
Yes.
But they come up and they're gonna surprise Chet and his wife, and right in the middle of him seducing her, he comes walking in with the video camera, and when they get out of the car, the wife says, this is messed up. We shouldn't be doing this, Roman. And that's Dan Aykroyd's name in the movie. And he says, what? We've invited them to the islands hundreds of times with us. She says, yes, but that's the difference. We weren't invited. And the music, the way he looks, and then that laugh. Yeah. When John Candy notices him because he makes some comment about Horny, Smokey's cousin, Horny the bear.
Horny the bear.
And he laughs and he's like, and it's just the most grating, terrible. Everything about him is just sleaze and
just in the way that Dan Aykroyd can do that.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
He can do that so well. He can play pompous, annoying asshole so well.
And it's cool how he can do it nuanced. Like when we did Trading Places.
Yes.
He is naive.
Yeah.
In his pompousness. In this, he's sleazy and pompous, and it's like, wow, that's really cool how he has the ability to change that character, and it wasn't the same character from Trading Places, just recycled,
and yet you still root for him.
Yeah,
like there's something
heart to him
about
parts.
Yeah, he has some heart, and you still enjoy this character. You still want him to be successful.
Yeah.
So yeah, he comes in with the big old video camera, and that thing threw me back too. I was like, 1988. This guy looks like a TV
shoulder
producer.
mounted.
Yeah, with a full tape deck in the side.
Got like a boom mic off the top of
it. Oh, he's getting all that in 480p or something, or 360 probably.
Seriously, like 17 again, 17.
It's not even if you did film something. It's not like you're going to be able to tell what it is.
That's right.
Like that's just
gonna have to get the tracking shots in.
That was our quality back then.
Exactly.
That was it. Is that you're looking at it? It's like, is that a nipple? I don't no. I think that's his wallet.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that a nipple? No, that's his eyeball.
Yep.
Okay. One of these is a nipple. I'm pretty sure.
You're lying to yourself.
Yeah. You're lying to yourself. Just wait for HBO.
Yeah. Well, then right after that, it cuts to them out on the porch, and the
two boys.
John Candy is so funny because he's laughing and just saying these horrible things about Roman, and he's like, "Oh, so you could tell he's so angry that Roman has showed up." He's like, "Oh, you're gonna be there the whole week, huh?"
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah. And he says, "You know, they're basically giving you a feel for these characters, and how." Normal and good, wholesome family man John Candy is, and how sleazy Roman is, Dan Aykroyd's character. And he says, you have a good life. Yeah. You make good money. Yeah. So why would you decide to bring your family up here? And they're sitting on the lake in this beautiful cabin. Yeah. Gorgeous panoramic view of this huge lake with all the pine trees going up the mountain on the other side. And he says, just look around. Like, this is what we're here for. This is the North Woods. And what do you see when you look out there? And he gives the rundown that is like, yeah, you're a total piece of crap. Yeah.
I mean, but like that great, 30-second monologue.
He shoves so much. I see the untapped resources of northern Wisconsin, Michigan, and whatever. Yeah. I see a lumber
mill
processing plant. I see if the minerals are there, mining operations. Yeah. And then the new craze, medical waste. And he runs off this huge list of like horribly disgusting things.
Like organs, limbs, intestines, spines, all like
blood, contaminated the feces, like all this stuff, all sealed and dumped to the bottom of the lake, sealed for centuries.
Yeah. For the rest of for all time.
And then he turns to John Candy. What do you see? I see trees. I see trees. Well, no one ever accused you of being a visionary. No, they didn't. It's just like, yep, that's the two characters.
This reminded me of Uncle Buck when like John Candy goes, "What's your record for asking consecutive questions?" He's like 17. He's like, "Yep, I'm your dad. I'm your uncle. All right. I'm your dad's brother. All right." Oh man! But so the one thing about in this film. In getting to like the favorite parts of it, and the parts that I was like, oh yeah, that's like, that was the iconic moment that reminded me of watching this on TV as a kid. But before that, it was interesting that all of them were pretty normal, like especially John Candy's family, and I kind of thought that was a little odd for a John Hughes movie, that like there wasn't a character or one of the brothers wasn't like a little weird or had something kooky, something kind of off about it, because both of the boys, really decent kids. Yeah. Like, I mean, one's a little selfish, like, but he's younger. And the older one, very responsible, really nice kid. Like, I liked all of them as a people, and I was just kind of wondering, like, where's the offset characters? And then we meet Dan Aykroyd's kids, like you said, were brought in from The Shining. Yeah. Like literally these two twin little girls, and they walk together.
When you meet them the first time, it's Buck and Benny standing on this pier, and he says, Benny turns to his older brother Buck and he says, "Do you feel something off?
Yes.
It's some kind of an alien presence." And Buck says, "I do definitely feel something kind of off." And they both turn around to look the other way off the other side of the pier. And it's the two cousins standing there like in The Shining at the end of the hallway, standing completely next to each other, just like the shot from The Shining. And it's like, ree, 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 ree.
I thought it was the Twilight Zone. It goes,
oh, yeah, that's right. It is that. It is that. And then they're just like, oh no.
I love that. That was like the one little quirky little like atmospheric thing that like John Hughes wrote in there was like, okay, the kids are weird, but they weren't even like that weird. They were just twins and very quiet and kind of silent. They were really stoic for a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And it's to, I think it was calling out to the fact that John Candy's family was normal. Like they were raised normal. They had a good mom and a good dad. They were raised right. They were taught respect. All that stuff.
Good
and
experiences.
Then Dan Aykroyd is a terrible father who, like the perfect example of his fathering when he says like, why don't you guys go out and collect bugs? That's and right. And Annette Bening's character is like slapping her neck and he's slapping his, and she says, "Roman, they don't like bugs." And he says, "Everybody likes fireflies. Their butts light up."
Yeah.
And the two girls scream. They're like, there's like an outside shot because they're screaming so loud.
Yeah, they run away.
But when John Candy does the story, when he goes into the bald-headed bear, Clare County, the story of the bear, and what an iconic scene where he's, delivering this whole thing about how on their honeymoon, they went up to the North Woods and he heard a noise and he comes out and he looks through the window and there's a massive grizzly bear.
My nightmare.
And the bear starts rattling the walls, and man, the description, like this whole monologue that he does is so good. The acting is so awesome with the giant black claws like Freddy Krueger's, only more terrifying.
Yeah.
And the white teeth with the canine stained pink from the last kill.
Whatever he just ate. Yeah.
And he's a man eater, and once they get a taste for human blood, they crave it. They need it. And like everybody in the room, even like Roman and the parents and the wife keep saying like, "This isn't a good idea. Let's not." He's like, "Oh no, they need to hear this.
Yeah.
It just might save their life one day." And then at the very end does the big reveal where he's like, "Whatever you do." Oh, but he explains how he pulls the shotgun down off the mantle. Yeah. And he raises the shotgun and the bear's looking him right in the eyes from outside the window. And Benny's like, and I unloaded on it. And "Oh, you wasted him? No, Benny. Shotgun's not going to take a bear down like that." It shaved the hair clean off the top of its head.
And his ball.
And it gives you the shot of like the bear there, like normal looking. Then also it's like, poof, and there's just no hair.
Yeah.
It's perfectly clean bald. And the bear runs off like, And then he goes back to the, whatever. If you're up here and you hear a noise, don't look out the window, because it might be a bear. And then he throws his brandy into the fireplace and it shoots a huge fireball at the top and scares the hell out of everybody.
Yeah.
And Roman starts saying, "Oh, I got 20 extra pounds on me. You're trying to give me a heart attack." I felt the plaque start flowing again and all this stuff. But the point that I was getting to was then in the next scene, like it cuts away and John Candy's sitting in the room with his youngest son, explaining to him that it was just a story that his dad told him and his dad told him before that. And one day you'll tell it to your kids. And part of it was true, but I embellished a lot of it. It was just for fun.
He said, I made the fangs that much longer.
A little bit bigger.
A little bigger.
And then, so then Dan Aykroyd's character Roman overhears him and he decides he's going to go in and talk to his daughters and make them comfortable. And it is the perfect example of how crappy this dude is. He goes in and tells them like, now, girls, I want you to understand that there are no bears. Your Uncle Chet was just spinning a yarn for your entertainment. A similar story was told to, and I don't want you to have any nightmares, because a similar story was told to me when I was a child about some escaped convicts from the mental institution who killed a whole family, or tied up a whole family and tortured them and ate them. And the girls are looking like, what the hell? And then he's like, all right, so now I want you to go to sleep. Think about nice things.
Cuddly things.
soft things.
Yes.
And he leaves the room, and then it's like the sun comes up in the morning, and the girls are laying in the exact same position, just staring at the ceiling.
That got me. I was floored by that movie
so
because
funny.
everyone else is waking up really calm, gently. Like the wife leans over, looks at the clock, and she's like, "Oh, okay, it's like 7:30 or something like that." And then it goes to the girls' room, and
Like the hard cut to them.
Yeah, they're both just still sitting there.
Like they have not moved a single muscle.
Not have moved. Yeah.
But and then they did the whole thing. Go ahead.
Oh no. But they like that's honestly my nightmare. Was the end of this movie.
Oh.
And the way like it all gonna, because like I've thought about whenever we've gone up to the cabins and stuff in the woods and stuff. Black bears. They're mostly the biggest thing that I have seen or come around. Someone told us, oh, we should all go camping like in North Dakota or Idaho. Or Oregon and stuff in that area. We should go up and do a cabin.
Mm-hmm.
My second thought about going was this video of this grizzly who just decided, no, I want to come inside. And you think you're safe, you're in the cabin, but the moment you watch how effortlessly this grizzly just paws this door open and the door like blasts off the hinge. And you're just like, okay, no, thank you.
They're massive.
I don't want to go.
And the bear in this movie, Bart the bear, super famous, and to the point where the Academy wanted to give him an Academy Award.
Oh, really?
But it's written in their bylaws that animals can't receive awards.
That's bullshit.
If anybody should have, Bart should have, because he was in so many movies, and he was such a lovable trained bear. And when you can like YouTube him with his trainer, and they just play like he's his little pet, and he is just massive. This bear, it is crazy how big they are.
And you see him and his trainer, like you think
he's
like,
a burly dude. He's a big boy.
Yeah, and you think, dude, you're pushing it too far. Like, okay, like you're a little too hard, buddy.
Head in the mouth.
I mean, puts his fist like in the bear's mouth, and he's like, "This is how I get him to let go." And like he puts his hand like down Bart's throat, and Bart knows like, okay, then back it up.
Yeah,
because Bart, I mean, that's the only bear I would ever feel comfortable with, is because he's like, the guy told him, he's like, Bart knows when he's hurting me, and he cares so much about me.
Yeah,
that he doesn't. He backs off immediately when I give him cues to.
Right.
And it's like some of the cues are I pop him, I pat his nose, or I put my hand in his mouth like that, and that gets him to back away.
It's so crazy.
You do that to any other bear, you're being torn in half.
Well, especially a grizzly.
Yeah.
You know what they said? There's the rhyme to help you remember what to do with bears, where it's black attack, where you're supposed to get big and move towards a black bear.
Yeah.
Brown get down, and you're supposed to lay down and pretend like you're dead.
Aren't you supposed to like cover your neck?
You're supposed to ball up.
Yeah.
And like you're just supposed to play as dead as possible.
Yeah.
Move as like don't move at all, because if you're dead, typically that's your best chance for them to move on.
Yeah.
And then white, good night, because
they're
just gonna fuck your ass. There ain't no getting away from it.
There was a book I read when I was like maybe 11 years old, and it was scary stories and like camping like stories and stuff like that, like about bear attacks and things. And it had that story in there from like this group that were trying to find cut a path through Antarctic or through the Arctic Sea or something like that. And they're going, their ship gets stuck. They decide to get out and start walking it. And then they literally just were started getting picked off one by one by this polar bear who just kept following them for like 3 days. Yeah. And there's nothing we could do.
Hey,
like everything. I was like, how did we even get this story? Like, I mean, if no one survived, how do we know like that this happened at all? And apparently like one guy got out and like got that one dude. And his whole recounting of it is horrifying.
Of course it is.
He's just like, there's nothing you can do.
No.
I mean, there's nothing you can do.
And out there, you're either predator or prey. There ain't no human and bear. You're just food or not.
Oh, God, no. Okay, so some of the great scenes from this movie were definitely
the water skiing scene.
Jet boat. Yes, the huge turbine engine on this thing. It's like it's a massive.
It is insane.
I'm surprised they could get all the actors in there, and this thing didn't like capsize.
It's true.
Or like it gets swamped
because there ain't no boat to it.
Like I mean,
it's just an engine.
Yeah, I mean, you know things about boat. Like how many horsepower do you think an engine of that size?
Oh man, it's got to be in the thousands.
Yeah, could have given a little. I mean, the thing was like it was like honestly, folks, it's like a dinghy.
Yeah,
like it's a little bigger than maybe. Like,
and it sits in the water like this much.
Yeah. Like maybe a 15 foot boat,
maybe
at most.
Yeah,
12 probably.
Yeah,
like absolutely teeny tiny, enormous hot rod engine, like outboard. Like,
it's crazy
on top of it. And John Candy goes to set him up, and he's trying to teach his kid. He's like, "Hey, okay, here's what you do. And if something goes wrong, what do we do?" And the kid's like, "What does he say?"
What, I don't know. Benny, you let go of the rope. Let go of the rope. There's trouble. Just gotta let go of the rope. Oh yeah, let go of the rope. Okay, Dad, can I just ski? Yeah, hold
on.
We got to teach you. We got to teach you. So
yeah,
then he starts waving to Roman because they're yelling at him like, "What's going on? Are we skiing or who's skiing?" He's like, yeah. And they're like, "Oh, he's going. He's gonna go. Like John Candy's gonna go."
Yeah, he raved to say it. And he's like, "Hold on." But they think, "Oh, it's him."
Yeah, and he's just like, "Ha ha ha." Yeah, he's good. But for some reason, John Candy's wearing a life jacket, and he has the skis on his feet.
He just happens to have them on. Yeah.
And then so he guns this jet boat, rips John Candy right off the dock to the point where it leaves like rubber streak marks on the dock, and the son as he's leaving yells, "Dad, let go of the rope."
Yeah, drop the rope. That's immediately what I thought. The moment his skis hit the water, he should just come like,
yeah,
down.
Exactly.
Because then he gets taken for a wild ass ride.
Go loose.
It's going loose. Yeah. Just getting loose. Yeah, he goes on a wild ride, almost decapitating people. With
many people with the ski rope.
The ski rope with the tow rope. Yeah, and I mean through crowded boats, people docking. He almost killed a bunch of ducks. And I thought that was the best thing. He goes, "Oh no, not the ducks!"
And I love how he's yelling, "You bastard! You bastard!" And they can't hear him. They're like, "What is he saying? You bastard! Go faster!
Yeah,
okay, go faster!
Like, go faster! Okay, immediately. Yes.
Yeah.
And in the way that John Candy, when he was telling that story, could be so terrifying, like in those moments, like with Uncle Buck, like if you turned Uncle Buck into a horror movie, like you could, because John Candy had that range where he could be absolutely hysterical, bubbly, laughy, like, you know, jolly kind of fat guy, but then he could turn on you and he could give you like that look in these faces and these eyes, and you believe him. It's believable.
And he's such a big boy that it was scary.
Yeah. Well, he was 6'3".
I don't know. He was a big boy,
6'4", but he was like near 400 at one point, like in his biggest was I think Uncle Buck or Plains Trains. He was huge.
Yeah, he was huge for sure.
I sorely miss that we don't get to see.
Gone too soon.
Yeah, John Candy as an older man, you know, in some of those roles. Like now to be like a funny, you know, grandfather or something. Yeah, but so there was that scene skiing. I loved the steak scene.
The old 96er.
The old 96er.
You know that restaurant that they filmed it in? Everywhere I was researching for this movie talked about how it burned down.
Oh yeah,
right after production.
Oh man!
And then they rebuilt it with a bunch of like memorabilia and stuff and posters and home of the old 96er and all that kind of stuff. But
which
that 96-ounce steak.
How much steak do you think you could eat in one sitting?
I mean, I don't know. I could really house some steak, but 96 ounces, that's a lot of steak.
I mean, I've put down maybe 32 ounces.
I could do that.
I
could probably get close.
Yeah, maybe 50.
I could probably. 50, I don't know. 60? I think so, but 96. And then when he's taking the last bite. And he turns, and the guy that's the butcher is like the terrifying, like Grizzly Adams looking dude. And he says like that's not the last bite. And he's like, "What are you talking about? There's nothing left on that plate but fat and gristle." And he's like, And then Dan Aykroyd says, "Okay, no problem." if I can get some desserts down him, do you think that we can get some hats and T-shirts for the kids? And right after that, it cuts to them leaving and
walking out.
All the kids are wearing hats and T-shirts. He freaking gave him dessert after a 96-ounce steak. So disgusting.
See, that's the thing I think about this movie is like there's so many great scenes in it, but like it's even funnier when like you discuss the situation. It feels so down to earth because it feels like, and maybe that's what John Hughes was going for here, was that it's not kooky, crazy kind of mania. It's a very normal summer event, you know, or family trip that some things happen. Like the older boy meets a girl in town, he falls in love with her, does that whole
They fall in love in like 14 seconds.
Oh yeah, it happens. It's quick. Well, it's hormones, dude. Like I mean,
guess.
like you can't unbridled hormones like
it's
that.
the whole thing with her there where she's like, you know, I've never had a boyfriend for longer than 2 weeks. Yeah. And then he's like, well, I've never had a girlfriend. I've dated girls. And she's like, well, what would you call me? And he's like, girlfriend. They literally met the night before and she hated him.
Yeah. They've been dating for a full 20 minutes. Yeah. I'm going to say
they went on half a date and now they're in love and they're boyfriend, girlfriend.
Yeah. But you know,
and she's so cute. That girl that plays that actor. She's so cute.
Yeah. There's a lot of cute girls in these 80s movies where I'm like, dude, like there's an aesthetic here that's like, they're adorable. Maybe, maybe that's why I like I fell in love with my wife because I'm always like, I like small women. like there she is. And maybe that's why. Yeah, because I grew up on these movies.
It's true.
But my wife is 5'2". Just for folks out there, she's small. I'm 6'2", she's 5'2". It kind of looks funny in pictures. Because I'm so much taller than her. She's gonna kill me when she hears this.
She doesn't listen.
Yeah, no. She gives me notes.
There you go.
She watches the clips I post, and then she gives me notes on those clips. So that's the best. But so she did that scene, and then we get towards the end where, which we're coming up close to the hour mark, but we get to the end where there's this. You find out that Roman, who's been this jerk this whole time, which were any like Dan Aykroyd didn't really have like big scenes. Like he did kind of play part B to this, but it wasn't like he had these,
it's a definite ensemble.
Yeah, it felt balanced, but it did feel like it was about John Candy.
Yeah,
and so you get to the end and you find out that he is kind of been conning people. This whole time during the movie he's been talking about calling people, trying to get a $25,000 investment, which I looked it up, which would be close to $100,000 today in terms of
it's a ton of money. Exchange. Inflation.
Yeah, it would have been huge. And so he's trying to get people to invest $25,000, but then you find out that there's no investment. Yeah. He's like, there's this big deal, and it's gonna go like platinum, multi-million dollars from your $25 investment. You find out he's broke, and that they've lost everything.
Yeah, big investment came up. He got overextended, lost a seat on the exchange.
That's the one. Yeah. And
it's been 2 years.
Oh, I didn't catch that line.
Yeah, 2 years that he's been. He says because he does the whole guilt trip on John Candy where he makes him think that he was in the bathroom at their wedding. Yeah. He was drunk. He was talking to his father, and he was saying how that Roman Craig is one underhanded or conniving son of a bitch.
Yeah, that's
it. And then he's like, what I would say to you, Chester, is if you're going to talk about somebody, make sure you look under the stalls for feet. And then John Candy's character is such a good guy that he is just devastated that he would have said these horrible things about him. Yeah. And they decide that they're going to give him the money, the $25,000, and because he even looks at his wife and says like, we could pull this together, and she's like, no,
we can't.
Yeah. So they get the money. They write him a check for what they can, and they're going to talk to the bank on Monday when they get home and do some things, move some stuff around. And Roman and his family leave with the $25,000 check. Mm-hmm. And then his wife starts saying like, I can't believe that, because they get in a big argument. And there's the whole funny scene with them telling... Where the mom, John Candy's wife, turns to Roman after he says like, "Thanks, Bucky," because he stops them from like fighting, like really getting into a physical fight in their argument, and she just turns around and goes, "Oh, blow it out your ass." And then John Candy, and then she's trying to get the kids not to say "blow it out your ass," and John Candy's like what I'm trying to say is that I would like to blow Uncle Roman out my ass. And then they're like, no, Benny, do you understand what your mother and I are trying to tell you? And he goes, Uncle Roman and Aunt whatever are total buttheads, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. You nailed it. But so then they leave, and when they're driving away, the Roman's wife is saying, you know, it's incredible that we could disagree so vehemently and like argue so much and be at each other's throats, and then for him to just turn around and cut you a check like that is so trusting, and it really speaks to the core of this family and how we can take care of each other, because that's a lot of money for them. From what I gather from Connie, that's it's like half a year's salary. That could be Buck and Benny's college funds, and you can see it on Roman's face where he's starting to think and like, oh no, like you're making me feel guilty about this. And he slams on the brakes, swings the car around, takes him back, and explains the whole thing about the investment, like how it was a sham. And he's like, we were living well, right? Well beyond our means, and talks about how their Rolexes are fake and they're completely broke. And then during all of this is when the kids, like the twin daughters twins, who had been going off, and there's like an abandoned mine area off in the woods
in the vicinity,
which they talk about earlier in the movie when the character tells them like, hey, I saw your kids over there. The kids like to go out there and yell down the hole, hear their voices echo. I won't even tell you what the teenagers like to do. And then
it's the same folks who check them in.
Yeah, exactly.
Wally, that's it.
So
Wally.
Funny. I love it that scene in the beginning too, where he's like riding on the hood of their car.
Yeah, to
on
tell
the way and where to go.
That way.
Like, okay,
over there. Yeah,
cool.
All right.
But so then the it's starting to thunder and everything, and the little girls go and they're like, it's up this way, and they go to the mine hole, and they end up falling down the mine hole and getting stuck down in the bottom. And
again, my nightmare.
You got the guy with the reverse skunk.
I didn't understand the purpose of him. I thought he was just coming into play.
He's just like a little joke, and to show you like a real storm's a coming.
Yeah,
but
that he runs away.
Hey, you got well, that and like the scene with where they go to the guys that's like 100 and something years old, 109 years old, to his birthday party.
Yes.
And he's like, crowd around him, kids. John Candy, crowd around him, take a picture with him. Oh, why don't the kids? And the guys try to tell him like, hey, don't do that. It's not a good idea. Don't do that. Stop. He's like, oh, what guy doesn't love little kids? He's 109 years old.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Why don't you give him a kiss? I don't think they should be kissing him on the cheek. What old man doesn't like a little girl kissing him on the cheek? A dead one.
Yeah.
And he's like, he died in the car on the way over, and the kids are like, God, and they start running, and you hear like John Candy's like, yes, go wash up.
Just go. Wash your hands. Oh,
but
man.
the 66 times where he's sitting at the bar and
just
he says,
a random dude.
How many times have you been hit by lightning now? He's like 666. And John Candy's like 6 times.
6 times. Wow.
And he's still going. 66 times in the head.
In the head.
And John Candy's like, oh my God.
It's gotta hurt every time.
It's gotta hurt. But at the end, so he's running around getting struck by lightning.
Random little scene of him in the woods.
He's probably up to 71, like 72 now.
Panicking, and he's like looking up at the clouds, and all of a sudden you see him wandering away, and then crack, and he's down.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it just keeps going. But so the girls they fall down a mine shaft.
And then they realize that the girls aren't there, so they go looking in the woods, and they're looking and looking and looking, and John Candy and Dan Aykroyd's characters come across this hole, and they hear the girls screaming help. Yeah. So they have this moment where John Candy tells Dan Aykroyd, go down there and get your girls.
Be there for your kids.
And he says, I can't. I'm claustrophobic. I could freeze up. And he's like, for once in your life, be their father, Roman. And he goes down the hole, and John Candy leaves to go get rope and a flashlight. And while he's gone, Dan Aykroyd manages to get them crawl up out of the hole with both kids on his back.
And then my nightmare begins again.
And then the bear appears inside the hole that they were in with the bald head, which they talked about in like some stuff that I saw, where it was incredibly hard to get Bart to wear the prosthetic.
I don't know how you're going to get a bear to wear anything.
I know the second they put it on, he would just paw it right off.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they managed in the end to do it, but it leads to one of my favorite moments in cinema history is after John Candy makes his way back. So he's run all the way for this giant fat guy to get this rope. Then he runs all the way back. Then he throws the rope down there with a loop in it, and Bart starts playing. Well, not Bart, it's the bald-headed bear, Clare County, but starts playing with the rope, and then he basically pulls. He goes around a tree and starts pulling back toward the hole to pull them up, and he's like, "You girls could help me. You could learn a lesson in helping."
Yeah.
And when he pulls the bear all the way up, and he thinks it's the kids and Roman, and he like collapses right down onto the ground right in front of the hole. And this massive bear is right in front of him.
Man,
he gets up and he takes off running.
Yeah,
gets all the way back to the cabin, and Roman and the girls are inside dry and everything.
They're already like making sandwiches.
Exactly, they're hanging out and they're like, "Oh, look, he's back! Hey, Chester, welcome back!" And it's my favorite scene, like one of my favorite scenes ever, where he's standing holding the door and he's like, big, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna make you a sandwich," and he's like, big, and she's like, "Oh, you want a big one? Okay, we'll make you a big one. And he's like, big bear, and they're like, "What is he saying? Big bear chase, big bear chase." Big bear chase me. And the second he says me, that door comes down and that bear is standing on top of him.
Yeah.
And it starts jumping up and down.
Did you think that was John Candy, or do you think that was Bart's?
I don't know. But
Bart's trainer.
It had to be a stunt double.
It was a big
It's
guy.
going to kill somebody.
Yeah, but like, so yeah, like a 600-pound bear is
that bear is so big
on this dude. and John Candy's playing it out. He's playing it. He's like, Harry, get it.
And then the bear goes in the house and starts like messing with the other people. And he gets back up and pushes the door back up. And he's like, "Big bear chase me. Big bear chase me." And I think it's because I saw it as a kid. But dude, it is so funny to me.
No, that still makes me laugh.
It's so funny. And his acting is hysterical.
So they do a great callback. And this is what I love about John Hughes is like John Hughes, like he's so good about like,
nothing's by accident.
Hey, look at that thing. Oh yeah, that's interesting. And you just think, okay, that's just the thing. So at the beginning of the movie, they walk into the cabin. And they're like, wow, it's still rustic, still smells the same. This place is great because they went there on their honeymoon, John Candy and his wife. And he looks over and he goes, look at that. A shotgun lamp. And it's a shotgun with the lamp stuck in the side of it, in the barrel on the very top. And he's like, don't see that every day. Moving right along. 90 minutes later, we get at the end, the bear's in the house. And Wally, the camp owner, hears it.
Because he hears the roaring of the bear.
And comes with the shotgun lamp now. And the best part of that
he has to plug it in.
He's trying to plug it in. He's like, it's a lamp, not a gun or something. And
he's like, yeah, but it's loaded.
Yeah, but it's loaded. That's...
And he gives it to John Candy, and John Candy cocks those hammers back and unloads into Bart's ass.
Yes.
And just blows all the hair right off the bear's ass.
The way that hair splits off that body, and you get these two like
bear butt cheeks.
Comical, like comic book bear butt cheeks. And they're jiggly, like they're real jiggly on the back of that bear.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and they're just, and the thing like just starts running out into the woods. Yeah.
And I love Buck's face, the son. As soon as the shot goes off, he's like, ooh.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so that it ends. They kind of have a reconciliation, and they decide that they're going to take care of Dan Aykroyd's family and let them live with them, and that's why he gives them this little like I'll race you home. Yeah. And John Candy does this great like,
race you.
Why would race you home? Like why?
Race you home.
Why would he say? And then he hasn't talked to his wife about it. Who's like, yeah, we're just for a few months. We got plenty of room. We're gonna let him in. And he's like, race you home. And he gets in the car and he's like, hurry, they're going to get the good spot in the garage.
The good spot in the garage is so ridiculous.
Oh, dude.
The only thing that real quick I want to talk about that we didn't talk about is there's two things, the raccoons.
The raccoons. Yes.
The va-va-va-voom. And they say a bunch of inappropriate stuff, but when you're a kid, you can't read subtitles. It's fine because you can't understand what they're saying.
Enough,
yeah. But they make the same joke about lips and assholes. You know what hot dogs are made out of? Lips and assholes. John Candy wanted to make hot dogs in the beginning, and Roman makes lobster tails instead. But he's like, you know what this guy wanted to make? Hot dogs. You know what those are made out of? Lips and assholes.
Don't tell Tanner that.
Yeah, no, for sure. But so they keep making appearances all throughout the movie, knocking their trash cans over and eating their garbage.
Such a great.
And after Eats the Old 96er, they had moved the garbage inside the house to keep the raccoons from getting to it.
Yeah.
And when they come back, the garbage is everywhere inside the house because the raccoons broke into the house.
And the raccoons are sentient. They're like, yeah, why do you think we have nimble little fingers?
Yeah.
We're just going to have to break into the house.
Yeah.
And they do.
Yeah,
So-
they just do it because they're experienced.
Yeah.
And right when they walk in, he's full of a 96-ounce steak and dessert.
Yeah.
And Roman's line is, would you look at the size of the maggots on that meat?
Ugh.
Oh, and it's just like, even as like an empty stomach guy right now, it's kind of like, oh, that's gross as hell. But he runs off and he goes to puke, and you can see like the kind of like the little blooper right there.
Oh,
when they all go into the hallway, and you can see Dan Aykroyd like one, two, three, and then they all scream and run out of the house. I thought that was funny.
I caught that, and then I read it in one of like the trivia things.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I saw it.
Yeah.
That's always fun. Is like when you get to see it before you read it.
When you catch it yourself.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is the bat scene where the bat's inside the house. That is a hysterical scene where Dan Aykroyd heads up hitting John Candy in the face with a tennis racket on a stick to kill this bat that they're trying to catch.
Yeah.
And then he gives the line where he's like, it's too bad he's a beautiful creature, but we got to get some sleep. And there's just like this horrible like whacking sound.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, dude, you should just put it outside.
In a post-COVID world. Yeah. I'm sorry. Kill the bat.
That's where it started.
I'm sorry.
Wuhan.
Yeah. Kill the bat.
No, I won't get into that.
Yeah,
That's Nostalgia Land After Dark. Dun, 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 dun.
John Candy and Dan Aykroyd. Oh,
wait.
sorry.
So the whole reason I brought up the raccoons is because after the movie is over and the credits roll,
yes, there's a stinger.
it comes to the stinger, and it's the raccoons, and they're like, hey, why is Jane sitting in the lake?
Yes.
And they're talking about the bear. And she's like, she got shot in the ass.
Yes.
And like, oh no, don't tell me. He's like, yep, bald. So funny. I never knew that was there as a kid until I watched it this time. I didn't even know there was a stinger there.
Because I rented on YouTube, and sure enough, I started scrolling through the credits just to make sure, just to get through
just
it.
to double check.
And then at the end, because I'm surprised at how often some of these old movies have little stinger scenes at the end.
Apparently, it was like a John Hughes thing.
It was to have stinger scenes.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. You watched it. You would watch it on TBS, Superstation, TNT. Or any movie, they cut that short because they got to make it up for the time,
right?
And so you'd miss that. So unless you own the VHS or watch it on YouTube now, you'd miss it. You wouldn't have it.
True.
But John Candy and Dan Aykroyd, I wish they'd done more movies together because it's basically the Abbott Costello like formula. Like John Candy's just
straight
a great
man.
like jiggly, bubbly, like funny, guy, and he can be serious, he can be angry, he can have those moments. And then Dan Aykroyd is playing the straight man, just like not silly, but then like his reactions to stuff are so good.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a John Hughes movie, so
great movie.
Nothing goes just wasted. Exactly, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Nothing's wasted. So I have to recommend this movie. It's a great cult classic.
It's
now.
so fun
To watch.
Yeah.
It's John Candy in his prime. It's Dan Aykroyd before the 90s.
Yeah. And it's a 90-minute run, so it's not like it's going to take up too much of your time.
Easy film. And
Super funny.
It's got a good amount of heart. It's got a good comedy into it. In that classic way, but in that classic kind of 80s comedy.
Yeah.
But that's not so... It's not too raunchy,
yeah.
In a way that like you couldn't watch this with.
There's not a ton of raunch in the movie at all.
Yeah, I mean, a bare woman's back, maybe a little side boob, and that's about it. And then lips and assholes, I think, is the biggest thing.
Yeah, there's some language in the movie with that.
And someone does say bastard, and there is a couple times where I think someone says shit.
Yeah.
Like really.
There's some language for sure. For sure.
But man, yeah. Give it a watch, dude. It's on YouTube. You can rent it out there. You can also find it on Amazon Prime as well. So I think that's gonna wrap it for us on this one, man. This has been a fun one.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. And stay tuned for next week. We're gonna talk about a local legend as well as I think a national legend now.
Definitely.
we're gonna dive into some good old folklore. So please join us again.
Yeah, come check us out.
You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and I don't know. We should get a Twitter account. I don't know if we have one, but
X.
X. I mean, I'm sorry, X.
I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever be able to call it X.
Yeah, we do have a website.
Yeah.
So you can find us at nostalgialand.podcast.com, or you can find us on Etsy shop, which is also Nostalgia Land shop. We got some great pieces up there. A lot of stuff is about the 90s jazz design, which is that squiggly turquoise and purple line that was on a lot of cups and stuff. So again, we miss Trey, love him, and hoping that the best for him and his family. And
for sure.
Again, thank you to Tony for joining us the other week. But yeah, as always, I'm Matt.
And I'm Tyler. Cowbunga.